This is the Mr. Green Show, where we discuss family and finance, the intersection between family and finance. Um, Look, if first time you've been to my show or my channel, basically the show goes like this. Basically, I would get an article and usually a finance article, and I would flip it and relate it to family and finance, i.e., the Mr. Green Family and Finance Show. But guess what? Today I'm breaking my own rule. I don't have an article today. I just have a concept that I wanted to present to you guys. So I'm hoping that you like the concept. I'm hoping that it's beneficial to you. So let's move forward. So today's not an article, but a concept that I wanted to get over to you guys. And basically, the title is the presentation. The title of the presentation is "Where do you store your labor?" Where do you store your labor? And you're like, what do you mean? Where I store my labor? I'll get into it. All right. So let's look at some of the statistics that I have. The average worker in the United States works about 34.4 labor or hours per week. The average weekly earnings is $984 per week, right? So let's take this number and I'm gonna play with it a little bit, the $984. We're gonna say a family of two, 984 multiplied by two, and then we'll say monthly, so we'll multiply by 4 weeks, okay? So we're gonna subtract some taxes and miscellaneous things, and we'll say we come up with about $5,500 for the average person that they bring home from their job, right? So as of December 2020, this is crazy. The savings rate, increased tremendously. Of course, because of the pandemic and everything that's happened, people were able to save because you really couldn't go anywhere. You really couldn't spend any money. So you were able to save some money, which is, horrible time, but in regards to savings, it was a good time for American. But we all want to, we definitely want to save, but we also want to spend too to keep the economy going. But savings is always great, right? Having extra money in case something happens. So we save $5,500, and then we multiply that times the savings rate, we get $753, right? $753. Okay. So when you have $753 out of the 5,500, so 86.3% of your labor and dollars you work for went to your expenses. When the average American went to their expenses, right? So housing, transportation, insurance, and healthcare, paying for all these items, the majority, 86.3% went to that. So $753, which you get to save, is yours, is your savings. And let's look at it differently. When we work and we labor, right? What we do is when we get paid, we transform our labor or transfer our labor into dollars, right? So we work, we get paid, we transfer that labor, we did a job, we spent that time, and that time that we work turns into dollars, okay? So year to date, the dollar is down 10%. Now this changes, is up and down, but the value of dollar is down 10%, right? So what does that mean? The dollar is down 10%. That means, so for the $984 that you work for, you really only earn $885.60 of buying power, right? Where you can take the dollar out and you can buy things. You really only got $885.60. Okay. So that means you only work for the 34.4 hours, but you really only pay for 30.96 hours, because when you convert the dollars, that's how much the dollars are really worth after you paid. So, but wait, there's more. Like there's always more. Housing is up 14.2% this year, as I discussed last week. If you're looking for a house, it's a hard time, but housing is up tremendously. Energy is up 2.4%. And maybe you're not buying a house, but more than likely you're going to have energy, heating, or air, depending on what part of the country you're in. And then you have to buy food. Food is up. So energy is up 2.4%, and energy is up 3.6% year to date. 3.6% year to date. So what are your choices? Like, you have your dollar, you work for it. It's worth a little bit less than what you work for, of course. Um, you have a few choices. You can invest in equities, right? Take your money. You can always do nothing and say, I don't care, whatever. I don't care about that. My dollar decreases. So what? It goes up and down. You can say, I didn't do anything. Or you can buy something, you can store your labor in an asset, right? An asset such as equities, which is stocks, right? And possibly you can get some of your labor back. You earn some of your interest back, right? You store it in real estate, which will, gain value and have income. You can start a business. Of course, takes a little bit of time, but still, you have an opportunity to gain income and get some of those hours back by reinvesting some of those dollars. Or you can buy Bitcoin, which is is really popular like now for growth. So there's some of the choices of where you can store your labor. And I really like all of those things, because I look at it as an all-weather approach. So, like I said, you can always save your dollars. And I believe you should have a reserve, 6 months, 12 months, have a reserve of dollars. So if something happens to you, or you have a break in your income, you have something away that you can use to pay those 86.3% of expenses. Hopefully you can get those expenses a little bit lower. But for right now, the majority of the average worker in the United States working hour are going towards those expenses that they have to pay. So like I said, you can buy equities, you can buy for growth, looking at, or some people buy for dividends, so you have a bunch of different options right there. But all in all, when you buy equities, of course, you hope that the value of the equities will increase in value, or over time, the stock market has increased over time, right? But of course, nothing is guaranteed, right? Real estate, you can buy for income. You control the property. You control the rents. You have more of income coming in, and you can take your dollars and reinvest those dollars there. You can store your labor hours there in real estate, right? Or you can start a business. Of course, storing your businesses take a little while, 2 to 5 to 7 years to really get off the ground. But, storing your dollars there for that growth in the future. And that's what we're really discussing when we discuss storing our labor, finding a place where we can put our labor hours after we transfer our hours into dollars, finding a place that will work for us while we're not working. Because the truth of the matter is we can only work so many hours, right? But it's our decision either to spend the majority of our hours or give our hours away to somebody else, in regards to our expenses. And we're going to have to give some of our hours a day because we all have to live. But, you definitely have control over that, where you can take majority of your income and decide to find areas to store your labor, rather in stocks, real estate. I like an all-weather approach, starting with your savings. First you have to save before you can do anything if you don't have a saving system. But after you save, then you can look at other areas to store your labor that will grow while your income may not grow as fast, right? So the whole objective is that when you store your labor, you want to find a place to store it in case you have an income disruption, like loss of job, loss of business income. We know from the pandemic, a lot of these things has happened, unfortunately, to a lot of people. But having savings and storing up some of your labor in some different places, so you have a diverse approach. We never know what's going to happen in regards to investing or in regards to our job or even our businesses, sometimes things happen, right? So having an idea and a concept of taking our labor and putting it different places. So we might have to go back to it some of that time and use some of that labor at, in a time where we might have income disruption, right? So that's what it's all about. Finding a place to store our labor where we don't have to work. Oh, this is a great concept. I remember reading about Bill Gates, and he said that initially, I forgot which book this was, initially when he was running Microsoft, he said, I want Microsoft to run a year without income. I want Microsoft to run a year without income, meaning he wanted to have enough labor stored up in his business where if he had a disruption in the business, that he could still run the business, right? Maybe not at the capacity he was running it at, but he wanted to basically stay afloat and stay working. And that's what it's all about. Financially, that's what it's all about, is that if we have an income disruption or from our income and where we're working, let's be able to hopefully, have something in place that will help us kind of go work over that tide. And that's why it's important that we really think about where we're storing our labor. Are we just giving our labor away, to a lot of different companies or whatever? And like I said, we have to spend money, but let's be mindful of that. When we really need it or something happens, we have to be able to access that labor. And that's when we have to look at storing it in different places, such as stocks, real estate, a business, or different items like that, different assets like that, that will work for us while we're working, right? So the first step, of course, is to store your labor hours, finding a place that's comfortable. Initially, like I said, savings should be the first place, but looking at the different asset types, doing your own research and finding out what fits you. The stock market isn't, look at maybe starting a business. If business is not good for you, maybe looking at real estate. Real estate has been my thing over the years. And I really just recently really started diversifying into equities. But real estate has been good to me, but it's up and down. It's not all. I know online is definitely glitz and glamour, but you're gonna have some tough times. I was just reading an article the other day. Some landlords are having a tough time. I've been blessed to be able to have used these different programs, Section 8 and some of the other different programs, and being able to tide over, until things pick back up. But I mean, it's risk in wherever you store your labor. That's why that often people just decide to store their labor in cash because they look, man, the risk of it. But really it's the risk of your cash losing value. Your cash will always lose value, right? So you want to find a place where it will increase in value. That's the name of the game of storing your labor. How can I take my labor and multiply it? And so it will increase the hours I have saved, right? Because for every dollar, you work for it and you spent time working for that. So every dollar you save, that gives you another hour that you haven't worked for, but you save for it. And then if you store it in different assets, then those assets will grow over time and increase in hours. So therefore, you have hours saved. So what I'm really discussing is it doesn't matter what asset you choose. Having a savings plan, right? Having a plan to save and looking into storing that savings in the assets that have interest, and that interest turns into interest and compounds over time. And that really, really all it does is turning into time, right? Time that you did not have to work for, but you saved the time over here. And that's the name of the game. This allows your labor to continue to work without you. These allow you to work for labor hours without having to work for labor hours, right? But you have to sacrifice and you have to have the savings. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, but I just say to everyone, be safe out there. And I hope this presentation was beneficial. Thank you.